Hi everyone, it's K-Red and welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a mandala, so I pulled out the graph paper that I've enjoyed so much. I'll put a link if I can find it in the comments as to where I got this paper, but it makes a mandala super easy, super fun. So here's just a quick sneak peek at the progression of this mandala. It was a lot of fun to go through it step by step. I actually drew this on the 4th of July here in America. That's a holiday for us. And so you'll see the fireworks or a little bit of the inspiration on that on the outside edges. Here's a look at some of the items that we used. Some micron markers, pencils, some blending tools, just a little bit at the end. But now that you know where we end up, let's go back and start at the beginning. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we start with this fun graph paper. Definitely going to be looking into more of these. When you just want to sit down and draw, you're not interested in creating all of the exact markings, and you're not planning on putting it on a wall. Obviously, these little faint blue lines don't go away at the end of the project. So if it was something that I was wanting to create as a gift or something that I wanted to create to frame, I wouldn't want to use this paper. But for days like today, when I just want to sit down and enjoy my morning coffee and have some fun time drawing, it's perfect. So today's drawing, I didn't even start with a general circle. I started right in the middle with some spikes coming out of the center. Added the basic flower petal. One of these days I'll take some time to look into perhaps what these should be called. But to me they look like flower petals. Filling in the outside of them will eventually make it look like I have a circle around it, but I didn't. I just filled in the little arches behind each one. So because often the way I work these projects, the way I draw my mandalas, is never really with a pre-plan. I just sit down with pen and paper and draw one line after the other and kind of see where I end up. A lot of times you end up with a really great looking drawing. Sometimes, well, to be honest, almost every time you end up with some mistakes. And that's okay too. So this one is no exception. I started doing these kind of, well, it looks a little bit like a heart, where I go skip a line and draw it down to the spike. You're going to see I get into a little trouble right from the start, because on the first one, I skipped one, and then I decided I didn't want to. So I just keep trying to work my way through, trying to see where I'm going to end up. Making one little mistake after another, and that's okay. So I kind of liked that line. I liked that it cut off that top corner. So I decided to keep doing that and make a kind of pinwheel in the middle. It will all work. So once you have your pinwheel, take a step back and look at it. What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you want to move on to do? While I'm thinking, I clean up my lines a little bit, kind of evaluate where I am. I really encourage you to do this process. It's a great way to work things out in your mind. No pressure, no stress. If at the end I don't like any of it, you can just fill it all in. But I decide I kind of like that messy pinwheel flower feel. Still have that one peg I'm not real happy with, but we'll see where we end up. Either it's just going to get absorbed in the picture and I won't even notice it anymore, or I'll come back and readdress it. So now I take a second and count exactly how many sections I have in between, and I put a little dots to find where my center mark is. And it turns out the center mark is right in between two squares. So then I go ahead and draw some more petals there. I do the same thing, find the center. Once I have the center, I can put my petal there. Take a step back, evaluate, turn your paper, and what do I want to do next? I'm always fond of a curvy line. So we just make a long, lazy S to create a ribbon or a border around this outside. I'm using a nice thin pin. It's just an 0.1 micron. So it gives us a nice small line. And we've created a nice little space between this ribbon and the inside circle to be able to do some fun designs in that. Sound a little bit like a broken record, but this is the format that I do. I make lines, I continue that pattern, I take a step back, I look, come in, fine tune a little bit, what catches my eye. Inside of these petals looked a little blank to me, so I wanted to fill them in, and I just put an actual little lowercase I in them, a line and a dot. So we start by doing a circle in the very top corner of that lazy S, and then we go back down, connect it to the colored in dot, and it'll make it look like our ribbon is thicker now. We've added some dimension and some depth into that outside ribbon. Step back. I'm liking that. Let's put a small definition, kind of an aura, but just in each segment. I try my best, but don't over obsess with having the spacing of that aura the same all the way around. Turn the paper so that it makes it easier, and keep going. So, trying to decide where to go next. Taking advantage of all of the pre-marked lines on the paper, I decide I'm going to make these little triangles. If you notice, I count out the spaces and put dots to help my eyes not get distracted. So a dot on the top, count down, a dot on the bottom. So now I know where to draw my lines. I draw the first ones where I'm trying to line them up with the blue line on the paper, hoping that this will really help make these lines uniformed without being too much of an effort on my own part. Now this shape right here that I'm drawing, these little triangles that descend in size and shape going down, have been my favorite doodle at work this week. If you looked at all of my notes at work during meetings or during briefings, you'll see this all over the edges of my paper. And I would not be the least bit surprised if you don't see it showing up in a lot more of my art. I've just really enjoyed drawing it. There are short lines, so there's just one easy motion of the fingers. The wrist can stay like it is. Doing this all the way around, trying to be careful on where I stop, has really created a nice circle. I encourage you all to give this one a try. It turned out a nice way to add some sharp lines in a mandala and still end up with a circle on the inside. I hope you all are doing well. Everything here is going well. Here in America, these summer months are super warm, at least where I am. It's been very hot, so I've been spending a little bit more time inside. I appreciate you all for watching. Would love to hear from you. Let me know what you're drawing. Feel like my paper needs some more dark. Fill in some half circles into our petals. As I draw, I always look for that balance between light and dark. That inside is still bothering me, so I make it a little bit more pronounced. And I actually do think it helps hide the mistake just a little bit. So let's see where we go next. So following the lines on the paper, this time I do decide to go ahead and draw a circle. Some little triangles in that open space. When you're drawing a circle like this, or any line, and you're continuing it on and breaking and continuing on past what your arm can draw, when you go and restart, back up just a tiny bit and redo the line where you did with a little bit less pressure, and then add the normal pressure. And what that's going to do is it's going to let you kind of continue that line where you can't tell where it stopped and started. Grab a nice thick pen and start filling in. And you can see with this dark pen how I always back up just a little bit in my line and then continue drawing again. A lot of times in my projects, I'll do circles all the way around to create kind of its own ribbon or its own design. But taking advantage of the squares on this paper, I went ahead and did squares going all the way around. I really enjoyed that it looked like something a little bit different than I normally would do. Now, anytime you want to do a mandala, you can draw the lines that are on this paper. Just do them lightly in pencil, and then you can erase them at the end. But I don't usually have that much patience. Drawing for me is about being a little bit more free with my drawings, being able just to ad-lib a little bit more in it. Sometimes I will use a ruler and really be patient and try to make my lines just right on a project, but most of the time, I don't want to do that. Most of the time, that's not where I want to spend my time. And that's when paper like this is perfect for me. Spacing can be really hard. Having everything look uniform and clean, well, if you've seen my art, you know I struggle with that a lot. So from here, we're just going to keep taking it one layer at a time. What comes to mind? I believe in drawing. What I'm doing here in these spaces is called hashing or hash lines. I might have that wrong, so if I do, go ahead and correct me. I'd appreciate learning the right words for things, but it's just a nice way of shading it. So now I decide to start with my fireworks inspired. I can start to hear some going off in town already. So we just do these big arced lines coming off along the outside. Wanted some definition on the end, and so I add a dark circle to the end of each one, straight on that line. When I want a circle that is exact, I don't mind at all getting out a tool or anything else to draw that circle. It could be a penny, it can be a cup, it can be some of these little circle tools I have. I just enjoy them all. And that's what I did here. I wanted an exact circle. I decided to start these lazy S's in pencil. At this point of the project, I'm enjoying it. I like the way it looks, and I didn't want to do anything now permanent until I knew I would like it. I'd like to revisit the same patterns over again. I think it gives a uniformity to the drawing. So out here on those circles, I go back to that S that I'd made earlier on. This one's a little less lazy. It's got a bigger arc in the middle, and so it's creating a bigger hoop that holds in those little firework sprays. So from here, we get to my favorite part as always, adding in the little things, some weights here, some lines here, some dots to there. Just what can I do to fill in this page? For me, this is about relieving the stress. This is about a bad work week that I get to be home, like I mentioned, with my cup of coffee, blessed to have some air conditioning, an audio book on, maybe some music on, maybe a YouTuber on, and breathing. It's not the time to solve the world's problems, just the time to enjoy. The page is pretty much full. The outline of the project is pretty much done, and it's all the finishing touches. It always amazes me when I look at this paper. Once I have my ink on it, those blue lines do tend to go away just a little bit. I decided on this day that I didn't want any of this page wasted. So I really wanted something in the corners. So I decided to do just some patterned lines all along the outside corners. Little waves, little dots. Just doing away with the blank area. Once I have my pattern down, straight line, dash line, dot, wave, I repeat that over and at each corner. I'm using about a medium pin, a number 5. And I decide that I'm not quite done today. I have a little bit more in me to keep going. So I decide to get out my pencils and see how I can shade. But first, I've got to clean up all my pencil marks. I have a few, just a couple of them. And let's get started. So I start off just by shading some of the general areas along the outside, kind of to emphasize some couple of certain edges. Then I have this little sandpaper pack, bunch of little sandpapers on there. It can be used to sharpen a pencil or to get a finer point if I want it on something. A lot of times what I like to do is put down a bunch of graphite pencil right onto the sandpaper. And then from there I use my blending tool and I just pull up the graphite from it and add it to my paper. It's a great way for me to be able to add some very soft shading without leaving a definitive line and without having too much graphite on my paper. At the bottom of these triangles, I want just a little bit of weight. I want to be able to emphasize that circle that it made because I thought that was pretty fun. And so on top of it, I just add a little bit of graphite, a little bit of pencil. It's also how I'll clean it off if I have a little bit too much on there and I want it clean. So now I'm not adding any at all. I'm just spreading out what is there to make it diffused even more. And to make a nice clean, I come back with my eraser. I love these little tiny erasers. I come back with my eraser and clean up the line underneath so that we can have a nice sharp contrast between the white of the paper and the shading. Go ahead and spread out the pencil a little bit on the, I call them my little firework arcs, but on these lines. Put a little graphite back on my blending stick and add shadows to the solid lines. So there's a shadow on the solid line with the little city line hash lines, and then shadow underneath each of the solid lines. Looking at my timeline, it took me about an hour sitting down and drawing. That's with lots of little breaks and pauses for life and everything in between. I hope you enjoyed it. Really appreciate you staying with me to the end. Let me know if you've given something like this a try. I hope your day is going well. We'll see you soon.